In this video, I'm going to show you how you can synthesize your own kicks. I'm firstly going to speak a little bit about the fundamentals behind the kick, and then I'm going to show you practically how you can actually design a kick in Serum, but you can use any synth. And then, yeah, this first part is basically going to be on here on YouTube, and then I'm going to be doing a whole series on my Patreon. So after this, I'm going to be doing a video on how you can make a kick out of noise, and then I'm going to be doing that with snares and claps, and then next week I'm going to be doing hats, cymbals, rides, percs, all that kind of stuff. And then next month after, I'm going to be doing a video on acoustic drums, so using addictive drums, using samples, and also designing drums out of Foley and other random pieces of audio and samples. So I'm going to be basically showing you a whole different range of ways you can make drums, and really just, you know, expanding your creativity and showing you that you don't have to use one method. You don't just have to use synthesis. You don't have to use samples every time. You can literally make drums out of any piece of audio, out of any sound, and you can be really creative and fun with it. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested, then go subscribe to my Patreon below. You know, it helps me out massively as well, anyone subscribing. There's already like so much content on there. There's exclusive music, samples, tutorials and stuff like that. And then yeah, this next couple months is going to be really fun because I've got a lot of really like deep dive kind of content coming out on drums. And yeah, just it's going to hopefully give you a lot of inspiration to show you that there's so many ways you can get interesting drum sounds. So first thing, I'm going to speak about the fundamentals and the basic science behind the kick drum. So I'm going to do that by basically showing an acoustic kick drum. So in this one here, let's play it for you quickly. You can see here we start off with the transient. So transient is basically a bit of non-tonal information. It's the initial hit at the start of a sound. So with a kick drum, or any drum really, for instance, you have the beater hitting the drum skin. So the drum will hit the drum skin with the beater, and that's going to create this click. It's going to create basically a force of the beater hitting the drum skin and cause that to move. So that's going to be like your initial impact and create this transient. And then you're going to get onto the body, which is here, which is basically what you get in the middle, what you get when the whole drum head vibrates and moves, and you get like the air compressing within the drum head. And this is basically going to like start creating sound waves. And in this like whole process from the transient as well, you're going to get like a pitch down. You get this because of the tension of the drum skin. The beater hits it, it has like a high frequency sound, and then as this like the tension like unravels over time, you're going to get a drop in pitch as the sound decays, as you can see there. So yeah, and then that's kind of the main bit of the body, and then the tail is here, which is where you're going to get like your kind of fundamental, the pitch where your kick will land. So that will be usually the fundamental of your track, if you're designing kick drums. So yeah, that's kind of like the basics of how a kick drum works. And obviously like there's a lot of more things, like you got to consider like the room it's recorded in, what it's recorded in, how hard it's struck, like what drum it is, so many different things, like how tight this drum skin is, and you know, there's so many things which are going to affect how the drum sounds. But that's the basic science behind it. So let's get into designing a kick. I'm going to use Serum, but you can use any synth you want, and you're going to see that it's pretty simple. And you know, I'm not using any special processors. It's just very simple standard synthesizer components. And yeah, I guess also me speaking a bit about the fundamentals of a kick before will really help you just know exactly how to design a kick, and like the kind of what you need to do, because you know the how and the why behind it. So we're going to start off with a sine wave, because we want like a nice fundamental to go off, and we're going to pick a pitch. So you usually want it in key of your track, because that's going to like fit, like it's going to have a nice phase and like musical relationship with other elements, particularly between your kick and bass. So you know, you usually want it between here really. So let's go like G maybe. You can also use a triangle wave as well, but I'm just using a sine wave just because then we can kind of build it up from there. So if we look at like other kicks, like these ones here, as you can see, it's really hard to like find the actual pitch, but they have like the fundamentals. So in this one, maybe it's A, and then the harmonic above. So what I'm going to do is actually use some additive synthesis and draw in the second harmonic here, just so we have that there, and that gives us kind of a nice basis to start off of. So yeah, the next thing I'm going to do is turn the random phase down. This means that it's going to start at the exact same point of the waveform every time. If you know, when you think of like an actual drummer, there is going to be like, you know, each hit will be different, but in this I don't really want each hit to be different. I want each hit to be the same because I want like a nice consistent sound, especially like for drum and bass or like any genres like that where it's quite like, you know, quite focused on like being a bit more precise. You know, it's important to have a constant phase, and I'm also going to set the phase here to 90 degrees, so it will start up here, if you can see, and that means that it's going to create like a click. If we set the attack to 0 as well, so there's no fade in, you can hear there's a click that comes in, so that's going to kind of act as our transient. You know, you can mess around with where it starts depending how clicky you want it, but I like to start with 90 and have it like quite clicky, because then when we like saturate it afterwards, it's gonna like squash in a little bit and you're not going to really hear that click as much. So next I'm going to draw in the envelopes. So you can either use the LFOs or the envelopes. I used to always use the LFOs, but I've started using the envelopes a little bit more recently, just because I kind of like seeing the exact time of your envelope down there. I just don't know, I quite like it visually, but honestly use either. The good thing about LFOs is you can be a bit more like precise with the exact lines you're drawing, so you can be a bit more precise with the shape, but yeah, it doesn't really matter too much. So basically you want to create a kind of a shape like this, like a just a little like plucky kind of like stabby sound. You know, you can fine tune it later on, but we want to start with that just to create the shape, which you can kind of see coming along here. And then we want to draw in 2 pitch envelopes. So remember how I said the first action of a kick drum will be the beater hitting the drum skin. So you want to create like an initial very short click, a transient. So, you know, it's literally going to be 8 milliseconds, that's fine. We can have this here to create, as you can hear, that little, it just adds to that a click a little bit more, where the phase at 0, you know, it's going from quite high. You know, yeah, again, it's just something we can fine tune later on, but we'll start at that. And then we want to create another one which is going to act as the body, as the thud within. So, you know, I was saying again how you have within the actual drum head, between the skins, you're going to get like a pitch down as well, which happens in there. So which creates that kind of like thuddy sound that comes out into the tail after. So yeah, again, we're going to draw some in. You can, as you can see in Serum, you can kind of like look at the overlapping envelopes. So we want to kind of like match it a little bit, but we want this one to finish off last, because we want the tail, we want the last action to be the fundamental, the final frequency of the sound. So if we go like that, maybe no, something like that, and maybe a little bit that way, and then we can put that onto the chorus. We want that from going a little bit lower, still a little bit obvious, so we'll go like that. And there's your main skeleton of the actual kick. You've got the shape of your kick, you've got the transient initial pitch envelope, and then you've got the thud body pitch envelope. So if we look at it in an oscilloscope, you can see like that is the shape of a kick really. That's the kind of shape you're going to be going for. So just a quick one, I'm going to edit this in somewhere. Like the shape of your kick is actually really important, and it's going to be a lot more obvious about what shape you want it when it's in contact with the rest of the track. And that's what makes drum synthesis really, really useful, is that you have like complete finite control over the shape and everything about your drum. So when it's actually put into contact, you can really get deep into the shape of it and fine tune it to a point where it fits perfectly in your track. So, you know, like it's at this shape now and this like decay time, but it might change, and it probably would change from the track. So yeah, that's just something to bear in mind. And yeah, it you know, it's completely genre specific and track specific even. It's not even just genre specific. Like, yeah, it's the classic. Yeah, I think Dead Mouse saying it more first about having short kicks, and it's really important like to take that into account when making like kind of bass heavy stuff. That, you know, if you've got a lot going on in your low end already and you've got like a really heavy bass, then you don't want a big long kick, because that's going to just muddy it all up, and you have to either do a long side chain or try and like phase line it all, or it's going to become a complete mess. So you just want like a quick kind of low frequency knock to be your kick. But then, you know, sometimes I've done like a lot bigger kicks, because, you know, if there isn't actually bass in the section where your kick is, then you can be a bit more like, you can give your kick a little bit more bass and a little bit more decay, because there's that space for it to be its own low frequency sound. So yeah, just take that into account, and yeah, just realize that is like the kind of the best thing about drum synthesis. If you can, is when it comes to an actual track and you have that context, you can really fine control the shape of it. So now we have this fundamental kick shape, we can add some saturation just to start to beef it up a little bit. So can do that, and then maybe I even use a different saturator as well. I like to, when doing saturation distortion, I like to spread it out along like different devices, just so you can control your sound a little bit more instead of slamming it all in one saturator. Using different ones will kind of help towards a more controlled and even cleaner sound. So I'm going to use maybe clip control on that, maybe change that, and straight away we're starting to get like quite like this one earlier, a lot more of like a heavier kick sound. And you can see the shape starting to come off a little bit more. Still got quite a heavy transient, but a lot of the time I'm going to put it into a bus with a clipper, and the clipper is going to clip that transient off. But yeah, we've got a nice kind of punchy, like thuddy kind of kick, which already, like by itself there, that is perfect really. Like some of the time that's really all you need, because, you know, you're not actually going to be really hearing the kick like on its own that much. It's going to be around other elements. But, you know, there's some things we can do. So another thing we can do actually is add a little noise click at the start. This is very optional, and like the kick is already quite clicky, so I probably won't do it. But if you want to add more of a transient onto your sound, you can just like, I'll put this envelope onto it, 'cause this is the pitch envelope for the transient. See, we've got these attack kicks here, which are little like kick transients. You've got that, and you've also got these kick transients here. Mess under phase is going to give you different kind of results. So let's see. You know, didn't mean to plan that. So that just is going to give you a lot more of a transient, a lot more of a click at the start. But, you know, a lot of the time it's not that necessary. It's already got a click. It's already got that kind of beta feel to it, so it isn't necessary. So I'm going to leave it out, but it's just something that you can try out if you want to. We can also find ways to make it a little bit more realistic by kind of enhancing the room feel to it, or the tail. So I like the tail is really just like this kind of fundamental pitch at the end. But if we want to give it a little bit more realism, we can add some, well, there's a variety of things we can add. The first thing is convolution. So convolution reverb is basically just a reverb which takes an impulse response from a room and uses that as a reverb. So it uses like a very short audio response, which is then used as the reverb. So instead of being like a normal reverb where it's like based off an algorithm, it's basically just putting your sound into a real space. Or it can be you can use any sample really, so you can be a bit more experimental with it, but it's just gonna basically add a very realistic kind of sound because it is putting it into a real space which has been recorded, like a real life, like this bedroom for instance. Like you'd record the reverb from this room and that would be the convolution. So I like to do this in parallel just so we can keep the initial kick and we can EQ it so we don't get any like low end in it. I can pick it in really. So that chapel sound is quite nice, quite boomy. I'm gonna EQ out kind of the low end here and maybe a bit of the high end. What we're also going to do is get a transient shaper just to take some of the transient out, just because I find it makes it a little bit of like a cleaner end sound rather than having all of the kick and the transient like going through into the reverb. And then obviously as well we want to take the decay down so it's not too long, but see there you go, you get a bit more of a tail, it feels a little bit more like it's actually being played in a room and not just being played on a computer. So it just adds that little bit more like room feel to it, and yeah, it just gives it a little bit more of a tail. Something I've also been experimenting with recently is using a cabinet. So this is basically just a emulation of a guitar cabinet, and it's another thing that just adds like that kind of roomy feel to it. So I tend to take the dry wet down so we get a little of the signal, change the mic to a dynamic, and then we can mess around with all these settings. But it just gives it like a little bit of like a bit more of a boomy kind of feel to it, and yeah, again, it's just adding to that kind of more roomy feel that it has, which it's just going to make your kick sound a lot more realistic. Like it's by no mean is it going to make it sound like a real acoustic kick. That's not what I'm really going for here, but it's kind of giving it a bit more of an organic feel. Finally, you can use noise to create a tail. You can also obviously use like acoustic samples, like Foley, like tape samples are always really good, but in this video I kind of just wanted to focus on using pure synthesis, so we're just going to do that. So yeah, what I'm going to do is just get another Serum open, and so yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to create some stereo noise by basically FMing this oscillator here. So if we FM that, there we go, we get some noise. We're going to use some pink noise, and then I'm going to use an LFO for this because I like having like really finite control over the exact over each node and the exact shape of this. So do that, and then again, it's just a lot of fine tuning. Something like that's okay, and then maybe we'll take a little bit of low end out. We can even do a band pass filter, so it's not too much high end either. I'm going to do like a little sweeping envelope just to give it a little bit of movement. Maybe even bring the drive up. But yeah, there you go. That's you can control how stereo it is with that as well. But yeah, as you can see, very simple, but it just adds turn it down a little bit as well. It makes it sound a little bit more realistic, gives it more of a tail, sounds like it's a bit more like it could be in a room and it could be a drum being hit. It can also help it cut through the mix a little bit, because think about it, like if you've just got the kick like this, so if we just have that, you don't really have much high-end information. All you have is like the little pitch down. You just have the transient at the start and the pitch down. So if we have that, gives it a little bit of little bit of high end. And with in context of the track, you know, obviously you're gonna be like side chaining stuff, and you'll probably be able to hear the kick still. But if you have that little bit of noise, it just adds that extra top end on top, which will make you be able to hear it a little bit better. So yeah, as you're gonna see, it's a very simple process. You know, all it takes is just a really simple waveform of a sine wave and maybe some harmonics. You know, you can add more harmonics as well if you want a different sound, like maybe add the third in or something. You know, that's the beauty of additive synthesis, is you can be really like finite and have so much control over the harmonics in your sound. And then yeah, it's just about getting the shape right, and then getting the shape of the pitch envelopes right, and you know, it is very simple. And then, you know, after that, all you really need to do is kind of saturate it just to bring the level up and give it a bit more thickness and body. And then after that, you can go really ham with what you're actually processing it with. Like I do like using convolution quite a lot on my kicks, just to give it a little bit of a more realistic feel. Put it in a kind of room, and it just gives it like a little bit more. It makes the kick a bit more of a prevalent part of the track. It's very easy for the kick just to be there, just to be in a knock, which is like kind of dictates the groove, which is all well and good, and in a lot of instances is all you need. But if you spice it up a little bit and process it in a way which makes it slightly more sonically interesting, then you're going to make the kick a bit more of a prevalent part and a bit more of a have its own unique characteristic and focal point within a track.